briefly just say what the purpose of the delegation was. We went down for the second anniversary of a coup that happened in June of 2009, June 28th. The president, the democratically elected president of Honduras, was taken from his bed in his pajamas at 5 in the morning and put on a Honduran Air Force plane, which then stopped at the U.S. Air Force Base in Honduras, the biggest base in Central America, before it was supposed to leave. So whatever you hear about the United States not knowing about this coup and not supporting it is basically diplomatic sunshine. So we spent the month traveling around. We spent a lot of time in the car so that we could see as many different struggles as possible. When we got to where we went, we stayed in the communities with people. Whether a lot of people actually have sort of spare space for human rights observers because they're used to having us. And so we slept in hammocks. People gave us delicious food all the time. And it was really amazing being part of these people's lives just for a little bit. We picked places based on the fact that there are active land struggles there. So I'll start off with one land struggle that is sort of a slightly shorter story. And this one does describe a lot of what's going on. The place that happened is an island called Chachalape, which is Coral Cay. It's about 400 feet long, maybe 150 feet wide. There are 40 houses on it. And it looks like Disneyland. You can put it in, start the slides. Yeah, keep on, you can go back. These are very cool. So this is a conch shell on the beach. Go ahead and get one more and we'll get to see what it actually looks like. So yeah, this is the view from where we slept in the hammocks. It's about 8 to 10 miles away from the mainland, so it can only be reached by a boat. So they have these artisanal canoes that they make themselves. They have little engines on the back of them. And it takes about an hour and a half to get out there. It's remote, but it is basically a gold mine because you can leave from here and fish, and there's a lot of really good fishing in the area. Fortunately, that has changed recently. Also, obviously, tourists want to come here. When I say it looks like Disneyland, it has roofs that are the thatched palm roofs, where the wind blows through but the rain doesn't come. So they're cool, but they're also dry. And everything about it is in peril. Everything about the existence of this community there is threatened. But for now, the people love it. And I had a woman say, I know that we're in trouble because, and I know that they want this because it's such a special place. The first thing that's threatening this place is kind of silly. Well, it's really silly. It's the Italian Celebrity Survivor series happens to be shot on this island across the river, the water. And they have, this has been going on for about 5 years. They did stop 1 year when the coup happened, and then they started right back again. So they have these huge boats with 250 horsepower engines, 2 of them sometimes speeding out several times a day, and the fishermen can tell that the fish have come because these high-speed boats are coming in. So now in order to go fishing, which is the only consistent income, they have to go 6 or 7 miles out, and some of them are rowing. So that makes it impossible. And basically, it seems fairly clear that having poor people on an island with such economic potential is considered basically a waste from the point of view of the wealthy of Honduras and developing resources at the expense of people is a very, very old pattern. So basically this is, if you turn 360 degrees, this is what you see. These are what the houses look like. They were built, I believe, about 20 years ago during a regime that happened to be pretty friendly. They were re-roofed with aid from the government when Mel Zelaya was president, and so he was opposed. So they have been getting some help, but the other thing that's happening is the incursion of, so this is viewing through the houses basically from that front yard into the other side of the island, so you can see how many there's 2 rows of houses up there, and then this beach. This is the backside of the island. Next to there is there are sea urchins. This is our good friend Alan having fun. So the other problem that's going on is that there are environmental foundations that have come in that have essentially, well, it's difficult to say because these things happen secretly, but they seem to have been bought off by somebody who wants the land. Because there was definitely a problem with the wildlife in the area, the turtles and the fish and the lobsters and everything, but it was almost entirely due to commercial fishing. There were huge industrial fishing fleets that were coming in up until about 5 years ago. And when the foundation did come in, they were able to create a protected area and keep the industrial fishing boats from coming in. But since then, basically they, private military groups, which I'll talk about more, and the police and military have been using protection of the wildlife as an excuse to harass the people. The people live on the island, do their fishing, and not only do they support themselves, but thousands of people live in the community of Nueva Armenia, which is where those fishermen were standing. And it's the port that is closest to Chachalape. So all of the voyages that people do back and forth go through Nueva Armenia, and the money that's made there gets spread throughout the community. So 200 people, a settlement of 200 people supports several thousand people, buys food, pays their expenses through the tourism and the fishing that they're able to do from Chachalape. So by eliminating access to fishing, they can economically force these folks off of this island, make it so they can't afford to get out there. And the community itself on land may or may not survive. If they do manage to make people leave, they may be able to help. If tourists end up going out to the island, they may be able to get in on that trade. But the people who've been living here for 50 or 80 years would like to stay. We can go to these pictures. So this is in the community of Nueva Armenia. This is in a hotel owned by a woman named Chichi. She rents her rooms for about $3 or $4 a night, and she's a feminist. So all over her walls, she has signs about. This says violence against women. You should not allow violence against women. If your partner treats you badly, don't be quiet. Tell them to stop. So this is Chichi right here. These are the fishermen, and they gave us a lot of testimony, recorded testimony about their troubles with the police. For many years, they've been harassed by the police and the military when they go out to fish. They've also been told that they can't fish. They do spearfishing. And so they make their spears out of rebar. And this is one that has been prohibited because it's sharp. And so the foundation has said that they can't allow people to fish with sharp spears, so they have to use a blunt one that's just narrower to hopefully maybe stun the fish. And they say that it's essentially impossible to fish that way. And so that's another way that they're fishing practices have been eliminated so that their land can be, or so that they can be pushed harder. Go ahead.
Yeah, why are we not allowed pointed spears? What's the purpose?
It's sort of an arbitrary environmental tool. Basically to give the fish a chance, essentially, is the idea.
Okay.
And what these people are doing is fishing for very specific fish. They, since they're not using nets, they can be selective and go for the fish that are more valuable and such. So the thing that I think that maybe the lesson that is most important to me from this situation is greenwashing, essentially. That this foundation that was created to protect wildlife has essentially been co-opted to push poor people away. And so they've created this conflict between poor people and the natural environment. And they've actually presented themselves, like the wealthy have presented themselves as defending the environment, essentially against poor people. And so this is something that we're going to get into when I talk about the next story. And then we'll come back. I think it is something sort of important for folks who support the environment to know about. Any questions?
I'm curious if this institute is there to protect the environment, what do they do about these big boats that are going back and forth? Why do they have something enforceable against them, if not to stop them from doing it, to at least have them repay the community for what was doing to their environment?
Apparently there was some money designated to compensate the communities, but it's been lost, essentially. They were told, there was a meeting, they were told that there would be money to compensate them, and they had to show up. So, it's pretty common.
And the institute, is it a Honduran?
It was actually founded, I believe, by, it used to be called the Honduran Coral Reef Foundation, and now it's called the Cayos Cochinos Foundation. And it was founded by an American investment banker who had gone to Honduras with the Peace Corps, and wanted to do his part to begin, to sort of protect these islands. But he sort of gave the leadership of it to other people, and it seems very good with the power. So yeah. Any other questions about what the situation is like that? Cool. So this is one island. Actually, I'm going to make this next part a little bit more of a discussion, because something has happened in Honduras since we got back that has really changed the situation. And so I'm just going to sort of introduce that, and then I think that talking about this new, I'm not sure, like just a not cliffhanger. The Army, so there's been this place called the Warm Valley that has been the site of a heated land dispute for a long time. There are campesino collectives there who've been there for a very long time, but the land is really valuable for planting oil palm. And so this businessman named Miguel Facuse, he's a junk food baron, and he wants to grow oil palm there. And so he's been trying to keep these people off. And he's been using his paramilitaries to threaten them. A couple months ago, a dozen or so casinos were killed in his valley. And then just this week, 1,000 soldiers were sent to intervene in this land conflict. So that's taking a paramilitary conflict and making it a military conflict with the government opposing these campesinos. And so that's a new phase in the situation for now. So I'm gonna
Hey Robby, how is the government enforcing like their justification to do so? Like what's their reason?
Well, the government, technically speaking, according to the military, they accuse the campesinos of essentially threatening the police and the paramilitaries. And so, according to them, it's responding to an armed uprising. So the funny thing about this is really, or it's not funny at all, is that the first skirmish, like the reason why, so there was a heated standoff with the security guards, and they brought in 400 police officers. With those 400 police officers there were shooting, and 5 guards and 1 teenager campesino died last week. Because these security guards died, they are allied with the police and military, so the police and military came in basically to back those forces. Keeping in mind that this guy Miguel Facuse and most of the wealthy in Honduras have extensive political connections. Facuse's cousin was the president about 10 years ago, and so they will make a lot of justifications for things that are purely simply in the interest of the wealthy.
Are the military then kicking them out?
They are trying to. I think, well, there was an issue. They get international funding from carbon credit programs to plant these palm oil plantations because the palm oil can be used to make biofuel. So they were actually getting loans from all kinds of international banks in the tens of millions of dollars to sometimes clear land and sometimes plant on pastures. But when they're clearing land, they're clearing rainforests. That is probably a little bit better for climate change than African palm, especially since you're going to burn the oil there. So that's what they've been getting this money for, is then to cut down rainforests and plant this oil palm. But the deaths that have been happening on campesinos have actually caused the German bank and the French bank to withdraw loans for those government programs. So they have seen some blowback from using violence, and so on some level they want to avoid using violence, while at the same time they want this. They want the land because there's so much money. All right. So I'm going to step back for a minute and make this a conversation. So I've been talking about campesinos. Like, somebody raise your hand and tell me what a campesino is.
Community group.
Okay. Well, campesino is derived from the word campo, which means field. And so it basically is somebody who spends time in the fields. Can mean somebody who works on somebody else's land, although people who work on other folks' land often, or almost always, have some traditional land, usually in the mountains that they go to when they're not working somewhere else, and grow their own corn and beans to feed themselves. And so there's a very, very strong connection between the people and the land. So campesino is defined in a land by the fields. There's sort of this, as I was talking about, there's sort of conflict between working a job and being a campesino, where folks can work off of their land to earn the money that they need, but they can also use that same time to be on their traditional land farming. Keep in mind that a lot of these folks speak Spanish as a second language. A lot of people speak indigenous languages, whether it be Lenca or Maya, or there are other indigenous groups there. These folks' ancestors literally domesticated corn. I mean, their ties to their food, they consider food to be sacred. They get very uncomfortable if food needs to be wasted. It's actually very polite not to wish somebody bon appetit as they're eating. So this food is basically sort of a link between the land and the people, and it means a lot. It's very, very deeply ingrained in their culture. And so when they're forced to earn money, when their land gets taken away, when they have a medical bill that somebody will put them in jail if they don't pay or something like that, it hurts for them to have to do work for somebody else. And for whatever reason, unemployment in Honduras is about 50%. So the economic situation is very, very bad. So much so that 28% of their GDP comes from remissions from the United States. So many people seek, I mean, they come here. This is a strong labor market compared to Honduras. So they come here to seek new work. And that's just from the U.S. That's not even remissions from Canada, Mexico, other places that folks have come to. I've talked about how these folks have been losing grip on the land. Who do you think, somebody raise your hand and just sort of guess who might be pushing these folks off?
U.S.
Okay, yeah.
Well, any export international trade organizations, the government itself is always looking to export to make money, and it usually goes to the oligarchy that controls the land.
Absolutely. So the oligarchy, they are the functionaries of the transnational corporations. They're the Honduran folks who sort of do a lot of the dirty work. They administrate these paramilitaries to keep the land in the hands of who needs to be in, keeping labor troubles down, things like that, so that the corporations who do business can have some positive momentum and say, oh, it's Hondurans attacking their own people. We have nothing to do with suppressing the strike on our land. Or, any number of, like for instance, a Canadian mining company, gold mining company, has had a gold mine upstream from a lake in Honduras for about 20 years. And I guess this is actually a situation where they don't seem to be using a Honduran front to pass things off. They're just polluting this huge great fishing lake with mercury inside. But so American politicians like to talk about Central America as our backyard. And apparently we like to keep slaves and toxic waste in our backyard. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, basically the Honduran economy is primarily agricultural, all kinds of agricultural products. Anybody have an idea? I guess, like what can I grow? I've already talked about the names.
I just wanted to go back a little bit here too. I mean, if you look back at history, when we use the word campesino, often that is, indigenous people living on the land, right? And the oligarchy, the Spanish begin to name people as they are camping out on this land. And in fact, that was their homeland. This is where people survived. We go back in history, we look at the idea that the indigenous population actually wasn't trading for money for products. It was survival. It was self-sufficient farming. But we can go back to the U.S. and there's the Sam the Banana Man. If you go back to just reading bitter fruit, Honduras was almost the center of which they went in and built the banana plantations, right? And the whole plantation idea, which then they Nicaragua, Guatemala, etc. So it has a long history of oppression and corporation. And Honduras has always been the center of U.S. control.
I mentioned the debates where the president's plane or the rice, and shrimp. Shrimp farming has become a big new thing in Honduras. And in most of these situations, the company selling the product wherever it gets exported to keeps most of the profit. The oligarchs keep most of the little that's left, and the folks working in the fields get just enough that they don't fall down below. Yeah. Okay. So we've already talked about. So there are just two more industries that I want to touch on really briefly that basically sum up primarily the Honduran economy. Tourism, obviously, small ecotourism has been presented as this big economic hope for Honduras. But for instance, in these communities, what we find is that the best land simply gets taken. Recently, there was some Colombians, which in Colombia is a very close American ally, especially the industries in Colombia. So the Colombian corporation came in and bought a bunch of land that had belonged to these folks. These are indigenous folks who are the descendants of escaped slaves, by the way. They're called the Davitian people, and they live all along the Caribbean coast of Honduras. So those are the folks whose land. Most of the coast is in the Caribbean, so they're under a lot of threat from tourism. And then the last thing is that, like I talked about, the maquilas. So a maquila is a factory. It's basically what we might call a sweatshop. It's a t-shirt, a very simple manufacturing facility. And maquilas are becoming always a bigger part of the Honduran economy. I actually had a shirt from a protest against SB 1070, and the shirt was made in Honduras. So, yeah. And so the thing about these industries is that they're all labor intensive because they have low labor costs, and they're all land intensive. And so control over the land is a very important issue. Okay. Since the Spanish arrived, as you've been saying, the campesinos have been struggling to keep their land. And it's basically been a huge seesaw. I mean, 500 years, and they still haven't eradicated indigenous languages. They still haven't prevented people from growing their own food, even though there are these huge plantations cultivated by machines in most of the lowlands, most of the fertile flat land in Honduras. So this is one of the amazing things about Honduras, is the strength that people have in this resistance. I spoke to, the first night we were in a community in Honduras. We went to an island called Sacapay, which is under siege by this guy Miguel Facuse, and talked to a 9-year-old girl who was telling me she was telling me about how, like, the struggle and how you can see the way that these kids act, and they are not bullies because they experience bullying from a real bully with a gun. So that is interesting. I mean, I don't mean to idealize anybody, but I know this is very good. These kids were so gentle with each other. And I do think it has something to do with the example of violence that they've experienced in their lives. Okay. So, talking about the repression, it's a cooperation between these private paramilitary security guards. They're everywhere in Honduras. You see them holding giant shotguns in front of a Walmart with a bulletproof vest on. Every gas station in the city has these armed guys there. But then in the country, what happens is somebody gets basically rams through legal justification for a piece of land, use their political connections to write a law that helps them, and then put up a big fence, and then have guys with 3-foot machetes just walking the fences constantly. But they dress like normal folks, so they kind of it's like they're trying to blend in, but still be threatening. You can kind of tell because they look unhappy but well fed. Yeah.
Well, do they have a machine gun over their shoulder?
Those ones don't carry guns over their shoulder, they carry them in their backpacks.
I thought it's hard to blend into the machine gun.
Right, exactly. And you know, people carry machetes regularly because it's how they chop wood, it's how they, you know, clear land. But this kind of, I think that this is actually, in this situation, this standoff that happened in the Iguan Valley, it seems pretty likely to me that the police got there, couldn't tell the difference between the campesinos and the armed security guards because they looked the same, thought these guys were armed campesinos and shot them. Then that began the conflict. I mean, obviously that's not the story that the military wants to tell. And so the official government story was that the campesinos were armed. But I don't know enough to guarantee that they weren't. But I do know that the security guards and the police who are already there are much better armed than these campesinos are.
So do the security people work for the business then, or do they work as part of the extension of the military?
They are, many of them are ex-military. This is actually one thing that is, the relationship between the paramilitaries and the military is really important because I couldn't find a figure from Honduras, but in Mexico, 50% of the army deserts every year. And they take their guns with them. And so, even though these paramilitaries are paid by private companies, and then these private companies have more money, still more money than the government does, like this. So they are working for them. There are fewer generally than the police and the military, at least in any one place. I mean, I guess probably over the whole country there are quite a few of them, but in any given place, they're sort of evenly distributed. And they ride around in trucks, like they. You see them, you see private soldiers all over.
Are they a military style truck?
Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're actually in trucks that are the same kind that the U.S. has given the Honduran military for drug war stuff. So it's almost as if it seems pretty clear that they've been sort of bought from the military or taken for the sake of drug war stuff. Or excuse me, of paramilitary stuff. Go ahead.
Were you able to find out how many were, let's say, Blackwater private security?
So the foreign element is mostly in training. There are a lot of folks there who have been trained by the school or by WINSEC, used to be the School of the Americas in Georgia. There are also they brought folks in from Israel to train the paramilitaries, from Colombia, from South Africa. So yeah, these wealthy folks just, they have these private companies that they do. Blackwater, they're an American security contracting company. They changed their name to XZ. Now XE, they're called Z. XE. But they're basically
the president, or the founder, is known to Eric cameras in order to avoid possible prosecution.
Yeah, so basically they're sort of like elite mercenaries. So yeah, we didn't actually see any Blackwater that we knew of, although training, I would be surprised if there wasn't some ex-Blackwater influence there. I'm going to really quickly talk about the drug war, bring that in. You may have heard that statistic about the Mexican army in that context, the drug war, because this desertion rate, folks taking their guns, seems to be one of the primary mechanisms arming drug cartels. There's a new cartel that started a few years ago called the Cetas. They're from southern Mexico, and they're all ex-Mexican special forces. So people from all over the military, the military folks don't get paid very much. There aren't that many jobs. So first they go in the military to make some money, or the police, and it doesn't really work out for them. And somebody knocks on their door and says, come be my private soldier, come run drugs for me, I'll triple your salary. And so a lot of the drug cartel staff has come to them that way. And so even though the United States is supporting militaries in Central America and Mexico to fight the drug war, all they're doing is arming the cartels. And the other thing that they're doing is that they're strengthening these militaries that they can then use to do exactly this kind of stuff, to harass campesinos. So even though it seems like a terrible, terrible, terrible catch-22 for them to be arming their supposed opposition, and then having to spend more money arming the military to fight these cartels. From the perspective of the governments of these places, their primary interest is making money, and this helps them do that by being able to use more military to keep people away. And the fact is, like, sort of from a personal perspective, so many people, so many soldiers defect. So many soldiers become private military, or excuse me, paramilitary, and become parts of the cartels. But these folks know each other. Our guide, while we were there, would point out a roadblock that sort of would block off a dead-end road. And this is a military, there are military roadblocks everywhere. We never got stopped because we were blanquillos, but they're there to be able to stop people. So our guy pointed out a roadblock once on a dead-end road, and he said, I'm sure there's a drug dealer going on here. So obviously, it's, you're going to run into a lot of interference if you try and claim that the government has ties with the drug cartels that they're supposed to be fighting. But it seems very clear that this is the situation. And furthermore, whenever you see new money, new construction in Honduras, the people we were with suspected drug. The drug trade has taken off greatly since the coup. Since the government, with the change of government, we've seen a lot more cartels. So that, maybe an indication of where the government lies in that war. Okay, so basically, the last thing that I'm going to get into is a cosmic joke. This guy, Miguel Facuse, quick background, he is originally from Palestine. He's about 80 years old, 85, something like that, so he came to Honduras when he was young, and began making money. Apparently he had very little money when he got to Honduras. He's just sort of this all-purpose bad guy for campesinos. Every campesino knows who he is, and knows that this guy is paying people to threaten these campesinos. Like I said, he owns several junk food companies in Honduras, and he also sells palm oil to outside importers from other places. The joke is that he claims to be, and in the mainstream media in Honduras, is considered the primary environmentalist in Honduras. And this is while he's cutting down his rainforest to plant the oil palm. But he's done this on purpose. He has intentionally tried to gain a reputation as an environmentalist. And one way that he does it is by hosting scientists. He actually has a Scarlet Macaw Research Center on this island that we went to. And has biologists at this research center looking at macabre breeding patterns. This seems like a contradiction with the stories I've heard of him hunting deer from helicopters. On this island, in the same place, apparently there were monkeys on these islands, and there just aren't anymore because they've been hunted basically to extinction on these islands. And so, so this research center, even though it's a contradiction within the society there, I saw several websites talking about how great this research station was and how great a host Miguel was to these scientists. And I have to guess that these scientists don't know what's going on with these sort of sheltered. Because I was a biologist, so usually they're pretty tough.
How long is that island? It's like you showed it, it looks like a...
Oh, I'm sorry. There are two islands though. This island, should maybe just put this on standby. The island that I'm talking about is called Zacate Grande. It's bigger. It's like several miles, several square miles, I think a couple dozen square miles. There's about 7,000 people living on it. Half of it has been taken by Miguel Jose. He used an agrarian in 1992 to sort of get backdoor rights to a lot of these, to a lot of the land there. And so yeah, that's the island I'm talking about. It's the second.
The other one is just really
It's tiny. Yeah. So the other thing that, well, there's, I guess, I talked about this participating in the carbon credit program. That lets him say to the international community that he is, working on climate change. And he is very, very PR oriented about publicizing that. And the crazy thing about Bakuse's environmentalism is that he's able to use the Honduran media. This is sort of an effect that has become really interesting. We saw it in Venezuela when the media in Venezuela were opposing Chavez, where the U.S. can support media in other places, and then the U.S. media can use their reports as first-hand accounting, and therefore they can show the United States what they want the United States to see without actively creating a falsehood. And so basically, this is the way that the private media in Honduras works. There are a few community radio stations, one TV station in Tegucigalpa, the capital, that supports the resistance, but everything else represents the left. To watch TV, you think that everybody loves the new president and hated Zelaya. That's just, when you actually talk to people, that's not the picture that you get. And so this media allows Bakuse to have this sort of echo chamber where you can say, I'm an environmentalist, and then by the time the news gets to the US, it sounds true because everybody in the media said it. He's also, one of the things that he's trying to do is actually to try and create a protected area on Zacate Grande, which would then allow him to exclude the folks who were there from his protected nature.
This is stepping back a little bit. He's getting carbon points for planting palm trees?
Yes, because the biofuel from that palm oil can replace gasoline. And so since...
But when they've gone through and done that all through Malaysia, they publicize the detrimental things that occurred because
I know.
they
It's actually very difficult to me to understand how these credit trading groups can can support his activities. You know, I'm wondering, I mean, obviously if they're seeing the human rights stuff and canceling some of these loans, somebody knows what he's really doing. So I don't understand like why they can know that he's cutting down forests in order to plant these palm trees and still consider that to be removing, you know, like reducing carbon emissions.
Who designates the points? I mean, who, you know, how much money are they getting and what is there?
I actually don't specifically know. Does anybody know like how the national carbon credits is
I think
going?
that some things are through the IMF and
Okay.
the World Bank. But there's been a lot of criticism on this carbon stuff because the way it's measured is, like you say, it often doesn't really relate to the realities of the replacement, depending on the force, etc. And it's, I think it was first proposed by former President Bush. Al Gore actually put forward the sort of environmental as an idea to try and encourage people to be involved in how can you make money, because the industry would always say, well, it's not profitable to be environmental, so they came up with this carbon figure that there is, if you Google it, you will find all kinds of information on it. And there have been I saw a documentary to Link TV on it. You just probably Google in carbon credit, Link TV will pull up a documentary.
So that's basically, you know, the greenwashing thing. I think it's maybe the primary lesson that I want folks to take. So I think maybe we can just, you know, open it up for discussion. Any questions or anything that anybody would like to say about the situation on this? Actually, I'm sorry, I will say one more thing, and that's about media. I believe that conversations are the start of change, and that having conversations between, like with folks in Honduras is a very, very important first step in changing things, especially since United States politics has such a huge influence in Latin America. And so there's a network of community radios all across Mesoamerica, including southern Mexico. And so I'm really excited about the possibility of bringing some of those folks up to table, or using some of their programming and basically using some people's media to tell these real stories. But we also, whatever means of having these real conversations. And I think that face-to-face conversations like often can be the most powerful. Even though, you know, it seems like it's slower than, you know, having a satellite transmitter. I feel like there can be more reason involved in face-to-face conversations, and they're more powerful. So I would encourage you to think of ideas. You know, obviously this is one of the ways of communicating within the community, so that we can start talking about what we're going to do. And also, we'll be working on creating conversations, like maybe on Skype, with the folks that we know in Honduras, to be able to coordinate stuff. So.
Are Alan and Rachel still back there? Or?
They're coming back in the next couple of weeks. Alan will be back the 6th.
Have you been communicating much with them about?
Actually, I've emailed them a couple of times, but they seem to be real busy. Alan, I guess, is in the hospital for a little bit. He got some kind of bad weather. But it sounds like he's okay.
Are they together or are they in separate places?
I know Rachel, as far as I know, is in Honduras, and I believe that she was thinking about maybe keeping a little bit of a low profile for a little while, because we had been so many places during the month delegation. I don't know. I mean, our guide had received death threats by text message. in the past, and so she kind of wants to let things go. And then Alan is working on a project with veterans in El Salvador. So that's what he's been doing for the past 2 weeks. This project is
You mentioned death threats. So how does that affect your progress as like independent journalist and down there? How is it compared to journalists in the Middle East and their travels and some of the situations they've got into? Is there any threats that come close to threatening your personal security while you're down there?
Yeah. So apparently they're much more hesitant to kill people from outside the country. There seems to be this double standard in the world media or the culture that responds, very negatively to an outsider dying, and doesn't. I mean, because 14 journalists have died since the coup. It's believed the most dangerous nation in the world to be journalistic.
Wow, the most dangerous.
Yeah, and there have been assassinations or very suspicious deaths of singers, poets. There was a death threat of Padre Fausto Mia, who's a priest who's 85 years old and had a release in Nicaragua a few weeks ago because his life was threatened. So it's very dangerous to be there. Apparently, it is less dangerous for an outsider to be there, and it actually has a somewhat preventative effect for somebody from outside to be there because the folks around them.
I see.
So you're saying 14 were local journalists?
Yes. Yeah, they were Honduran. I don't believe that. It doesn't come to mind that. Well, there was a woman who's Colombian, who's a part of a group called Colombians for Peace, who left yesterday or the day before because she was receiving death threats. She was a human rights observer in Honduras.
So there was such a huge organized response to the coup, and we saw so much of it, and then Zelaya comes back, and of course we're not likely to hear much about it through our corporate media, or we can hear it other than through the Honduran media. But did that organizing and that energy, was it maintained? Do you know if there's still that kind of cohesion that was there?
There is. For instance, in the election that they had in 2010, this is a country with no apathy, and only 29% of people voted. And this is an election where the military chose the candidates. So that's 71% of the people essentially choosing a vote of no confidence. It's a tough struggle. People are starving. They're fighting because they're starving. So even though it is very difficult, the amount of trust in them is so low. People are very, very engaged in finding something different. And that's actually like the militants, like when Dr. King talked about the marvelous militants that he saw in the civil rights movement, that's the kind of militants that happen. People will face down guns with sticks. Just because they basically have no other option, and because they draw such strength from being on land in such conditions.
So what's the next step, and also what should the common American do?
Well, so the Honduran Resistance Front, the National Resistance Front, so the day that the coup happened was on a day where the people were going to vote on whether they wanted to rewrite the Honduran Constitution. Because the Constitution was written in the 80s with the help of the U.S. military. And so the resistance has actually, they got together last month and wrote their own constitution. And so they have been essentially organizing their own system. Like they're organizing their own culture, or their own society outside of politics in Honduras. We saw a network of organic farms there that trains people that farm organically, buys products at a fair price, and sells products, good, wholesome food to people at a fair price. And they actually have their own money in this network, so they're basically creating their own economy. And so that's what they're doing. Unfortunately, and I mean, I think that their organizing is very, very powerful. But the problem is that violence can destroy pretty much anything if it's allowed to. And a lot of the violence there is coming from things that the United States supports, like our drug war fund and just the operations of our corporations. So I believe that we need to begin a conversation in the United States about these effects, about the reality of what our government does with our tax money. And I mean, it's huge, but I think we actually need to change U.S. policy towards Central America because, we've been deposing presidents since the 20s in Latin America. I mean, there's Guatemala, Brazil, Chile. I mean, the list is too long by the time to go into. So I think that, I mean, it's really too bad. Or I mean, it's really too bad because it's basically the operation of our entire economy depends on minerals, depends on cheap labor, depends on these things that come from these other places. But I do think that the average American has very, very little control over that. And so rather than feeling guilty for participating in the system, I think that it's very important for people in the United States to recognize who is actually making these decisions. There are people, in our government, and they have connections to very large corporations. And those folks know how they make their money and how to make the job. And so I think that we in the United States, democracy is very complicated, but I think we need to do whatever we can, and I think we can do the conversation to change U.S. policy.
Yeah, well, there's a number of things we can do.
Right. And I mean, there's lots of that I don't know about.
Yeah, you can always write your congressmen and legislators and say to stop funding the military and close the bases on one thing and Honduras. But one thing to really do is first educate yourself more about what is going on. It's not just Honduras. I mean, Libya had just been overthrown, basically. I just read an article that was saying that this was why Libya, why at this time. And I did a workshop that was about what did Honduras and Libya have in common. Yeah. One of the things is that they were both, they were belligerent to the U.S. interests in those countries. Gaddafi himself had actually already seceded a number of oil interests to the British and the Americans. So it wasn't about oil. So what was it that was really fueling this so-called revolution? It was not nonviolent like it was in Tunisia and in Egypt. It was one that started off with violence. And so it would seem to be being generated. So why was the U.S. and NATO so interested in Libya? One was that they really feared they had lost control of Egypt and Tunisia and some parts of the Middle East. And that fear of not having control over their other interests and hegemony in that area also meant that they were already losing control. Why is Hugo Chavez and Evo Morales and others in Latin America such a threat? Because they're losing control. They are rejecting the economic models of austerity that have been forced upon people that have created grave poverty and these export thefts of the wealth of the resources of people in all these countries. So now with one analysis was saying that the real reason that they were going into Libya was to threaten the Egyptians and the Arab Spring, basically. with a client government so that they can control that area, and a warning to any others who dare rise up that they can use military force to shut them down. Why in Honduras? Same reason as because Chavez and Venezuela, Bolivia, Argentina, all of these countries have rejected the model that has been forced upon them for centuries. And Honduras, where we have our largest base and has been at the center of these things, is another reason saying now we have Libya and nobody stops us from doing it. We can do whatever we want. They can now go into Honduras, use military might and strength against the campesinos or anybody else, and threaten anybody else in Latin America. This opens the door towards assassination of leaders. There's a talk about now not using large militaries to go in, but the SEALs now have become the major part of what's funded in this nation. These special ops organizations, the SEALs, the Berets, Green Berets, etc. They are now being, they've taken over command in Latin America, been appointed as the heads of those commands. The SEAL that was involved in the assassination of Osama bin Laden has just been appointed to a command in Latin America. That means that they can go in with a small force using drones and other kinds of technology to survey and strike at anybody who seems to be the leadership of any movement that's rising up and trying to create a better world. So those are major threats. So it's our responsibility in this country to say that we need to stop these wars, we need to stop the way our military is being funded, and we need our own revolution in this country to re-examine how we organize our economy. That's happening in Wisconsin, it's happening across this country. There's a march in Washington, D.C. where people are going the October 6th Stop the Machine, in which people in this country are supposed to be going to Washington, D.C. in the thousands and hopefully millions to sit in Washington, D.C. Taking their lead, their model from Egypt and Press Square, and they're saying they're going to go there and they're not going to stop until these economic measures change. So there's a revolution that is being started here, but it's going to depend on all of us and how we can do it. Everybody can go there, but we can design and have local programs of support to raise money to keep those people who decide to stay there for as long as it takes, is what they're saying. They need food and shelter and money to stay alive. So we can build an organization here to help create funds to keep them going, to donate food, to make sure that those that are standing there, standing up for the rights of all the people of the world, have an opportunity to change this horrible fascist movement in our government that's occurring in the last 10 years. That's one of my...
I'll be right back. I'm just going to turn the lights on.
Maybe the last 30 years.
I
You
would
really
say-
look at it.
I would say, yes. More polite.
Well said.
Cool. So any other thoughts about the revolution? Go ahead.
I actually kind of want to add to what you said. Most people would agree that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are essentially two halves of the same function. There's really no difference between them. In the late 1990s, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who is now in the Obama administration, wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard, American Primacy and its Geostrategic Imperatives. And in that book, he's actually really clear. He's basically saying, what does America need to do in the new millennium in order to maintain its power? And he's very, very clear, and he says what we need to do, amongst other things, and to give the point, is dominate the natural gas resources of North Africa. He's very clear. 2 years later, the Project for the New American Century, which is a right-wing think tank, released a document that said the exact same thing. So really what we have is the Democrats and the Republicans saying we need to control North Africa. So it's not a surprise at all that Libya's been invaded. He's been sitting there for a long time, just basically waiting to be overthrown. Since the 1980s with the Reagan bomb. But I also want to then flip to the media, which is also related. I don't think we're ever going to have a very good revolution in this country, at least not as long as we have a mainstream media that we have today. When you have 550 channels of crap to watch, it's very easy to get sort of dissuaded, swayed from what's really important. I was thinking a couple of things that you were saying about how the people of Honduras were so committed and sort of connected to everything, and I see that's what happens when you don't have 500 channels of garbage to distract you. I am a firm, absolute believer, and call me a conspiracy nut if you want, I don't care, I absolutely believe that a great deal of the apathy in this country is a direct result from television.
Sure.
A direct result. And I believe it works on a subliminal effect. I believe there's simply the acknowledged scientific addictive effect of television. I mean, that's not even a conspiracy anymore. Scientific American in 2001 had on the cover, television addiction is no mere metaphor. I mean, it's now known. And I think that when you have people there who are not surrounded by endless images of decontextualized violence, where they're able to exist and experiencing violence in its realist form, it's an entirely different way of perceiving the world, which is why kids are so violent and nasty with each other, because they see so much violence and don't really have any consciousness of the consequences of that violence. But when you live it, it's an entirely different thing.
What's interesting is they actually do have all those channels. It's just that the world that it projects is so removed from the lives of most Hondurans that they just, it's funny because people even watch it. I mean, even in the resistance, you'll see people watching soap operas, or, watching these TV channels that have these horrible commercials, and they're sexist programming, and so I think that it's essentially the media in the United States has to contend with our democratic process, and so I feel like they need to appeal to a lot of Americans in order to be able to communicate the political messages that they need to, whereas the political process in Honduras still disenfranchises enough people that they don't need to do that, and so their media serves a slightly different purpose. But I mean, it's interesting. They actually make the choice not to watch TV because they don't connect with it. And so I think that in the United States there's definitely the possibility, especially as our economy continues to stagnate, there's really, it seems like the recovery that's expected is getting further and further into the future. I'm not sure why they're expecting it, but as that happens, I feel like there's more and more space for disaffected people who recognize and reject the media and begin creating other kinds of communities. And even though this is we've got Hollywood, we've got everything here. I see a lot of disaffection here and a lot of potential.
I just want to bring up a couple of things.
Yeah.
A lot of times I get on this phone call where there's people from all over the country talking about issues around Honduras.
Yeah.
And we even have people from the Frente on the call.
Yeah.
And what they're asking for right now is, since we're talking about what we can do, what they're asking for right now is for people to join a delegation to go down and do accompaniment in Honduras. And several accompaniment projects have been put together recently. And if anybody wants to hear about those and kind of want to get some more information about what that's all about, I'll give you your email address and I'll get some information.
Yeah, it's basically to the point where they want people there watching in the Vietnam all the time.
Just do what you were saying before when we were talking. They need a lot of that right now because just last week 11 campesinos were killed in one day.
And then since the occupation's been there, they've been killing a couple folks a day. Just shooting them in the truck.
The death squads are out just like in El Salvador in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's really escalating terribly right now, and they're begging for more accompaniment. So that's one thing. And there's the organization that a lot of us here obviously know about is PCASC. And PCASC is putting together a campaign around the drug war. Because the drug war, we pick, that's being picked as the kind of the central subject to organize a campaign around. Kind of because it's sort of a sexy subject right now. There's a lot of talk about all the murders in, Mexico. It's the 40th anniversary of the drug war, and so there's quite a bit of information in the papers lately. And so, because there's some, it's kind of in the news a little bit, not much, but a little bit, there's some exposure. We're going to do a campaign around that, and what we're going to do is we're going to develop leadership groups, that are going to be doing training. We're going to train ourselves to do lectures, speaking, kind of put together like come in as like a guest speaker at a workshop on Latin American issues and, you know, maybe in a history class or something like that, you know, in high schools.
Yeah.
And so we're going to put together these trainings, workshops, and maybe, you know, we don't know what it's going to do. It's going to be on a, you know, conversational, you know, just a give and take. We don't have goals yet, but we're going to hope to put those together. And then as we talk to people, the goals will come out of that, because we're thinking, you know, the conversations and the information as we share it will create what you know, what should then come out of it.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to go with, oh, we know and we're going to tell you. We're going to go with, hey, here's some facts. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Cool. Any other last questions or comments?
Well, and let me just say one last thing.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to get involved with PCASC, obviously a lot of us are already.
Yeah.
But we're having there's a big event this Friday night. There's a salsa
Oh yeah.
concert, dance, party, whatever you want to call it. It's at the, and everybody's invited to come. Please come.
I'm actually trying
And
to sell
it's
a
at
couple
the
tickets
national,
to it.
oh, they know about it already?
No, I just have a couple tickets to it now, and I
Oh, good.
need to
Sell
sell
them,
them. Yeah.
sell them, yes.
Yeah. So if you need tickets, come to me. It's gonna be really fun. They were really good.
Where's it at?
The Village Ballroom,
The Village Ballroom on
Yeah, do you commit it,
700 Northeast Beacon.
Friday evening. From 7 to 8.
And there'll be a lot of people, you know, involved in this kind of work there, and you can definitely get involved.
Salsa dancing. food.
And salsa dancing, yes,
Hungry.
yeah. If they want to learn how to do salsa,
And air conditioning.
it'll be a lot of fun, and, you know, productive.
For sure. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your listening and you. Basically, my job right now is to go back, especially with this going on, with things intensifying. I plan to go back as an observer, as a journalist, and getting in the rhythm of really producing the content. Working on this is, I've got a couple of things written, and so I'm going to be probably working with FreeGeek to get a computer and just making sure that everything is ready. And so any way that you'd like to support would be great. As most of you know, we went before by doing just general labor to raise money, and we're looking for that again. So go ahead and contact me.
Hat to hats.
Let's
Good one tonight.
see.